my name's Laura and welcome to my channel. And what I'm going to talk about today is the 6 reasons why I think that some raw vegans look more aged. But first I want to talk about just the aging process in general, and a couple of things that I know is that as we age, our muscles do weaken. So this is why I believe in using some facial aerobics and different things to help to try to keep the muscle taut. But of course, there's many other contributing factors to what makes us age. So now let's just get into the 6 different things that I think can make a raw vegan look older. So number 1 is losing a lot more weight or being a lot thinner. Most raw vegans that you see are very thin compared to most of the world. And in society today, we're kind of taught that people that have more meat on their bones and they have a chubbier face, and they sometimes meat eaters have a redder face, and that's considered to be healthy, and having more weight on you is considered healthy. So that's one of the reasons why I have actually really started doing some face yoga aerobics and different things and using gua sha, is because I have lost a lot more weight, and I wasn't real heavy to begin with, but I did have more weight on my face and my neck. And I think that a lot of people that when they go on a raw vegan lifestyle, sometimes they lose more weight. In my case, I lost more weight. One of the reasons why we don't weigh a lot is because we're not eating all the processed foods and all the fast foods that everybody's out there eating, and that makes you gain a lot more weight. And of course, meat has a lot of fat, and it has a lot of other things too, but it has a lot of fat, so you definitely won't have that real plump look being on a raw vegan lifestyle. Of course, there are ways to get a little bit more plump in the face, and as a matter of fact, I had looked at an older video where I was eating a little bit different than what I had been lately, and I noticed that I did have a little bit more plumpness, and that could be due to a couple of different factors, because I did cut down my fat intake, and I'm thinking that maybe I don't really need to do that. So we're always tweaking our diets and trying to get that happy medium, which is okay. We're all human, and it's okay to think one way and to have a certain idea of what you think that you want to be doing on your raw veganism, and then later you might change it back to something that you originally did before that was working better. Some people have added some cooked foods, and some people have added more fats than others, and what works for one person may not work for another. But as far as the aging part goes, it really has some to do with that. I think that when you are heavier, and as a matter of fact, I was watching the news the other day, and there's a couple of girls on there, and they are girls that are built a whole lot bigger than I am. I probably weigh 100 pounds soaking wet. And so, you know, these girls are built much bigger, and I work with girls that are built much bigger than I am. And they have a little more filled looking cheeks and faces, and it actually does look nice and look healthy. These girls on the news are very pretty girls, and you know, they're always dressed, and they're always fixed up, and they have their face, and their face really does look nice with some plumpness to it. And I remember years ago when somebody had asked me once, how come fat people or chubby people always look so young, and their skin always looks good? And that is one of the reasons. I mean, depending on the person and their genes, and depending on the kind of skin that they have, sometimes people do really look healthy, but sometimes looking healthy doesn't always mean that it is healthy. And I have known several people that looked very young for a really long time, actually looked a lot younger for their years for a long time, that had, you know, a lot more weight to them. And when they got sick and had to lose the weight because they had either heart troubles or other kinds of troubles contributing, or even diabetic and things of that nature, that people have to cut things out. And when they have to cut things out, they lose weight. When you're not eating that much fat, you lose weight. So being a raw vegan, you can see where if your face has a lot less meat and fat to it, it definitely can make you look to other people like you're not that healthy or more aged. And getting back to these people, when they actually lost the weight, they looked like they had aged 20 years because the wrinkles and everything were always there. You could not see what was happening to the muscle tone, because when their face drops, it doesn't go anywhere because it has all of this extra stuff from actual fat deposits. So fat deposits can sometimes be a kind of a Botox effect. So that is what I decided is number one on why some raw vegans can look a little bit older, because on a whole, most of them are very thin. So number two is not getting enough sleep. And this is something that could be really tricky. And I know for me it's really tricky because I sleep about 6 hours a night, maybe once in a while 5 or so. But most of the time it's about 6 hours. And for the most part, I could run on that pretty good for a long time. But sometimes if you don't have enough downtime in between and actual rest, and you're not getting enough sleep on top of that, you're not getting 7 or 8 hours, sometimes things can kind of catch up and you don't realize it. And when you get a certain age, I know most women know this, the first place it shows is in your face. It's like an immediate sag that happens. It's something that just happens when you're tired. Sleep is so essential. And what's hard about doing this is trying to rotate your schedule around to where you can eat at the right time so that you have that 3 hours of digestion before bed, which I'm very, very strict with myself about that. I do not go to bed unless I have 3 hours because there's no sense in sleeping if you are going to be digesting all night, because it's the kind of sleep that you're getting too. So, but getting into why I think raw vegans sometimes don't get as much sleep is because of the fact that the enzymes and all of the live foods that we're eating are keeping us kind of generally on an ongoing high all the time. I know for myself that I never had the energy that I have. Sometimes I actually overdo it because I don't know how to rest anymore. I used to know how to rest because I was always tired and I was always run down when I was not on raw foods, and I was dealing with chronic fatigue. And when I would take medicine or something because I had another urinary infection or something, I was sleeping. So I slept quite a bit and I never felt rested. But on the raw vegan lifestyle, you are really constantly on the go and you have a lot of energy. So it's hard to know sometimes how to rest. It's hard to understand. For me, I know it's hard for me to say, Laura, sit down and rest, because I just feel so energetic all the time. And every time I sit, I know there's another thing that I know that I could do. So I think sometimes, I guess the point that I'm getting at is I think sometimes that the raw vegans can overdo it a lot more. Whereas if you're not on a raw diet, you don't have that kind of energy to keep going to wear yourself out. So I think sometimes I look older days when I'm just burning the candle all the time on every end and not getting enough rest. So it's not only sleep, but rest. Rest, sleep, there's a few different things that you need to do to rejuvenate your body. So that's what I put for number 2, is some raw vegans look older because they don't sleep as much or get enough sleep. So number 3 is sometimes I think that some raw vegans actually get too much sun. Now I go out in the sun, but I do use sunblock. As a matter of fact, I have been really adamant this year about putting sunblock on when I go outside, because I think that it's still important. And I think sometimes that we as raw vegans, and we're trying not to put toxic things in the body and things of that nature, that sometimes we won't use any sunscreen, which I am using a sunscreen that is a little bit less toxic. And I try to use shea butter, which I melt that down, and I use that because it is a 15 block, and I always wear that every day under makeup and things. I make sure that I put that on. So I think sometimes that some raw vegans think that because of the toxins in a lot of the sunblock that they do not use sunblock. And also I think that because of the foods that we eat, that is somewhat of a natural sunblock, but I do believe that you do still have to protect your skin. And I have seen some girls in their 30s, nobody's names mentioned, but I have seen some raw vegans that have looked a little bit more slightly aged around their eyes, but absolutely nothing to really be concerned about, because as we age, even after our 20s, when we get into our 30s, smile lines appear, and depending on expressions, and if you're out in the sun, you do tend to squint and expression more, or express more. So, these things are contributing factors, and depending on your genes and where you develop the wrinkles or how much you frown, these are the things that can definitely contribute to the look of aged skin. And I think that it is important to still protect your skin regardless. I know that a lot of the toxins and things go into the liver, and as raw vegans, we're always trying to keep our body cleansed and things. But I feel that if you do go out in the sun and your face is being exposed, wearing a hat and putting on at least more sunscreen those days that you're in the heavier sun, and at least trying to put some minimal sunscreen on the days that you're just even sitting in the car and things, I do think will help protect your skin along with a raw vegan lifestyle. And that we shouldn't really be walking around saying, oh, I've just eaten all this seaweed and all these sun protecting foods, and I could just go out and sit out there all day. Well, Braeburn apples are something that if you eat that before you go out in the sun, that's supposed to really help protect you. So I wouldn't say, don't use these food protections also, but I do think that sometimes we could be a little bit less careful about some things that I think we should still be a little bit more careful with as raw vegans. So for number 3, I say too much sun exposure sometimes that some raw vegans have done can be contributing to some of the age. So number 4, I think, is the fact that most us raw vegans are a little bit more nature people. We are trying to stick with nature. We are trying to put as little toxins as we can in our body. So I think that the majority of raw vegans, and I don't know all of them, I don't know exactly what all of them are doing, But I kind of suspect that a lot of them are doing the same thing that I am, where they're trying to age naturally and they're trying to do natural things and not using the Botox and fillers and stuff. So I've had people ask me a couple of times about Botox and fillers and whether or not I have used any of them. And the answer to that is, back about 6 years ago or so, I did use Botox. I never used the other stuff, the fillers. I tried Botox and was getting Botox in my forehead at one time because I don't like when I lift my eyebrows and I have these lines. So I wanted those gone, and I was using that for about 1.5 years or so. And I did like the results. I had a very firm forehead and it looked really good. But the reason why I decided to not use Botox anymore, which I've never considered fillers, I haven't really gotten into thinking about that, and I hadn't done that. But as far as the Botox is concerned, I decided to stop doing that for 2 different reasons why I stopped doing that. So the one reason was when I started to go through some cleansing on the raw vegan lifestyle, and I started re-evaluating what kind of chemicals I wanted to put in, I decided that if I was going into natural foods, that I wanted to do this a natural way. It wasn't about the money. I could have afforded to keep doing Botox if I had wanted to, but the reason why I quit using it was because I decided that it's something that you have to commit to and do for the rest of your life. And to me, that's kind of a big commitment to keep putting these toxins repeatedly into my body. And I think a lot of raw vegans feel the same way. And there's a lot of 50-something-year-old and 40 and going on 40-year-olds that aren't getting any Botox that are raw vegans. But there's a lot of people out there that are using Botox and fillers on a regular basis. And I'm talking very young girls, what I consider very young, being in their 30s and things, that are getting their Botox around their eyes and their forehead. And so there's a lot of people that we see on TV and that we see on the news and that we see on just movies and, general acting and different things, that a lot of these people, and even very young and in their 20s even, are getting Botox. So, they're filled up with a lot of these different chemicals that they're using, on top of the fact that a lot of them aren't quite as thin, and some people are still, overweight on top of that. So there's a lot of filling in there with all these different materials helping, and eating more fat and more processed foods, keeping them a little plumper. It's kind of helping that look that people think is very healthy, that really plump and, filled up look where there's not a single line and your skin just looks like when you were a baby. So, again, that does not mean health. And just because you might have a little bit of 11s, which I'm starting to get, and I was in a wreck 3 years ago, and I think that when the airbag hit there and I had a big knot, that I probably weakened the muscles, and so I'm seeing a little bit more of an 11 line than I've ever had before. And I refuse to go and get Botox in it. I just don't want to go that route. So I'm not saying never, but right now I don't want to. And I don't think I ever will. I feel that it's too much money and it's too much of a continual use, like I had said. But I think that most raw vegans feel that way. I think most raw vegans are pretty much natural, and that they try to stay away from these toxic things going into the body, even though they say when they inject it, it's only in the site. But we know that some of that stuff travels into our bodies, and God only knows what it could be doing. Of course, I know that I have other toxic things in my body, like tattoos. I've got several of those, not as many as I see people doing now. There's a lot of body art, and there's a lot of different things going on where people are spending a lot of their money inking up and using the injections and getting rid of the wrinkles. And as of the time that I started to become raw vegan, I have not done any of these things. No more tattoos, no more needles in my face or anything like that. So definitely what I have seen, even from losing the weight that I have lost, that generally if I didn't do some facial aerobic things that I have tried, because I was seeing some sagging due to the fact that I always had a fuller face before, is the fact that even being on this raw vegan lifestyle, it's really hard for me to find ways to gain weight in my case. So, and I'm probably not, I don't look as skinny to some people, but most of the people that I'm around are light years bigger than I am, and I'm always cold and they're always hot, and they have much fuller faces. And, you know, I did start to become aware of my face feeling so much skinnier, and what can I do to keep my face taut. So anyway, that's what I really think. I really think that because we are living in nature and eating nature foods, and we are losing more weight, and we're being like our bodies should be, and we're not blown up with all of these chemicals in our bodies, that we can sometimes, to some people, look a little bit more unhealthy or a little bit more aged. So number 5, I think, is the fact that, now this is something that it's not something personal, saying that I know who's doing this, or I might have even done it, which I think I have done it before. But sometimes I think that raw vegans get a little bit too concerned, overly concerned, about not taking any supplements or eating too much fat and doing too much worrying. And I think that that is one of the worst contributing factors to age, is being uptight and worried all the time, and worried about what we're eating and what we're not getting, and we're not supposed to eat as much fat, and we're on low fat now, and instead of just kind of going easy and listening to our bodies, and which I have seen several times, where when I cut back on too much fat, that I really don't look my best, and I need to eat a little bit more fat than maybe somebody else that I've seen. And what fat is too much fat is a question that I don't really have the answer to, but I know that I see a lot of fads out there going on, and a lot of raw vegans follow these fads of don't eat any oil, don't eat any fat, don't eat all these different things. And sometimes I think that it gets a little bit carried away, and we can make ourselves get a little bit sick by and being afraid to take supplements, and certain supplements that might cause toxic wastes in our liver, and worrying about all of that. And so to not worry so much about so many things, and if you need a supplement, take it. And if you feel like you need to eat more fat, do it, and not to worry so much. Worrying isn't good for the skin or the way we look at all, but I do think that a lot of raw vegans are kind of uptight about a lot of things, and trying to follow too much of the dogma, and that, you know, sometimes we are missing some things that could be contributing to why we're not actually at times looking our best, and maybe that would make people think that raw vegans look more aged. So number 6 is, unlike myself, who I enjoy wearing makeup, and I have really went through a lot to find more organic and stuff that is toxin free and got rid of all the real yuck stuff that I used to use. But however, I do wear makeup, but there's a lot of raw vegans that want to be so natural that they really don't apply any makeup. And I think they look beautiful. And I enjoy once in a while not wearing any makeup either. And I have talked about that in another video and have went on a few videos. My sunflower sprout video, I didn't have a drop of makeup on. And, you know, sometimes that look is okay for me, but I've always been one to wear cosmetics. But a lot of women don't that are raw vegans. And, you know, a lot of people judge people by the way they look with makeup looks a little bit more healthier. And in some ways, it does. I mean, when your cheeks have color and you have more color in your face, it can make you have a healthy glow. And there's things that you can do to give yourself a healthy glow with highlighters in your cheeks. And you can add some shimmer to your eyes. And it really does and can. It could also do the opposite, though. It can make you look younger and brighter. It can also, at times when I have overdone it, can really put age. And I know that there's some women that are around my age that understand that when they have put too much makeup on, it can add age. But I think for the most part, if you know how to apply it properly, that it does really give you a youthful glow, that when people aren't wearing any, they don't have that all those different colors and things, although they have a natural glow. But to society, society tends to like you to look, we talked earlier about being heavier and fuller in the face and having more meat on your bones and a more made up look. And if people aren't wearing makeup and they're skinny, a lot of times people might think that that makes them look more aged. So that's another reason why I think a lot of raw vegans that I see don't wear a lot of makeup. And some people may be saying that that's unhealthy, but to me, they look very healthy. I could see the glow from underneath, and I think it's beautiful. So I'm certainly not putting down anybody that doesn't wear it, and I'm certainly not saying that they look unhealthy, but I do know how society judges people, and I am around a lot of different kinds of people that look at things differently. So I've decided that to be number 6 reason why I think that people may look at raw vegans as not looking as healthy or looking sickly or what have you. Your genes, I mean, there's different ways of aging, and sometimes it's not just the wrinkles that make people look older. Sometimes people have a beard and it makes them look a lot older, and when they shave it off, they don't look as old. You know, and some people just choose to use a beard whether or not it makes them look older or not. But when you really look at their skin, there's no wrinkles at all. They might even have less wrinkles than I do, or somebody else that is considered to look younger. So aging just has a lot of different things about it. And, you know, there's so many different things and contributing factors that could be making somebody look older. And it's not just a thing about raw veganism. I have a daughter who, she's 35 years old, which is pretty young, but I mean, she uses the filters all the time when she goes on video and things. And you know, they down a lot of older people for using filters like myself, but a lot of the younger girls use filters, and it's okay for younger girls to use filters. And even some of them, like she complains to me that she has an 11 line and she's always squinting. And, you know, I mean, sometimes even younger people have lines in their face from expression. And, you know, I think she looks absolutely flawless and beautiful. I don't really know what she's talking about, but you know, as women, if we sit and we stare in the mirror for hours, of course we can find a million things that would be wrong. And I'm sure on bad days, we all have days where we might look older or feel older than other times, but hereditary is a thing that there are some things in age that just somebody could be a raw vegan and just they look the best that they could look, but they don't really have wrinkles or don't, have all these things, but they can just have an older look, whether they have a beard or they don't, or whatever, they can just have an older look. So sometimes I think that some of the raw veganism and all of the things being talked about out there about it and why we look so aged, it could be a little bit over the top. So that's just what I want to say about that. We all age differently, but there are all of those 7 things have factors as to why raw vegans can look older. And there's a lot of people out there that look older that aren't raw vegans, that are smoking and drinking and could be also underweight. Sometimes when people are doing drugs and drinking, they are overweight or underweight, depending on whether it's beer or drugs or what they're doing. So I guess the bottom line is that health is not always seen on the outside. I mean, there's certain things, being a cosmetologist, I know when people's hair is unhealthy and things of that nature, that a lot of times you can look and see that there is something wrong underlying, and there's some things that are a given, but there are some things that are just the way that it is. I mean, some people may just look that way because of the fact that they're thinner or because of certain changes that have happened. And different times in your life, if you look back at pictures and things, you can see times when you have looked different than others. And there's videos that I could look at myself and say, I look pretty good there. And then the next one I'm going, gosh, I look pretty aged in that one. And it really can depend on how I slept. It can depend on whether or not I'm not eating enough that I'm supposed to be eating, and maybe not getting enough of what I'm supposed to be getting. And I could see where I've lost weight and that doesn't look good, and it does age me a little bit. So, those are all the things that I think about raw vegan, looking old, and other things that could be contributing, and that other people out there can also have aged looks for different reasons. So stop picking on raw vegans. No. I just also want to say that another reason why I had stopped using the Botox injections in my forehead about 6 years ago was because one of the reasons had to do with when I started getting on raw foods and everything, but another reason was because I had been saved. And I'm not saying that anybody that's using it, I don't feel that God is against people using injections or anything. It doesn't say anything like that in the Bible. But for myself, I felt that it was foolish. There's something in the Bible that talks about being a fool and spending too much money. And I can't tell you where I read that. I know it's in there somewhere. But I just decided that I don't need to be spending foolish money on injections and putting needles in my skin. And I decided to do it more naturally and to not use my money frivolously and try to be more wise. So I'm just going to go ahead and close with that. And I'm going to read this, and this is out of Samuel, and it is chapter 16, verse 7. And it says, "The Lord does not see as man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." So I hope you all enjoyed this video and got something out of it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and have a wonderful, blessed day.